Good morning, America. It's Dr. Toker, and I promised we were going to have a little brief discussion on why wheat is bad for you. Now, I know you don't want to hear those words, and I know I don't want to hear those words because I do love bread. Wheat is what's bad for you, not necessarily bread. A lot of bread is made out of wheat, however. Wheat contains a substance that is so yummy and so evil at the same time. And that's the dichotomy we live in, right? So you love bread, you love the yumminess of the chewy kind of consistency of the bread, the smell of the bread, all comes from a particular protein called gluten. And gluten is a really cool protein in that it gives bread all of those properties that we really like about it. It's chewy, and it smells awesome, and it's soft. And if you take the gluten out of your bread, it does not have any of those qualities. Gluten-free bread is not fun bread. Okay, fun bread has gluten in it. The problem is that gluten is actually something called an anti-nutrient. Anti-nutrient. It's actually a poison made by the wheat plant to make animals sick so they won't eat the wheat plant. This is how wheat defends itself against hapless animals who think, ooh, yummy wheat. And so it's what makes it yummy, but by definition, it is there to poison us. Now, some people are super duper sensitive to that, and those people have something called celiac disease. Celiac disease is an extremely uncommon allergy to the gluten protein. It is probably present in 1 in 50,000 people. Usually that presents itself in young children as a failure to thrive. Now, you will see Celiac Foundation and gluten-free, everything everywhere. So why is that? Because probably 15 years ago, you would not be able to find any of these gluten-free substances on the shelf. And the issue then comes to gluten sensitivity. That is very different than a gluten allergy. Now, it doesn't mean the patient feels any better in the presence of gluten. It just means it's not an allergic reaction, which means it's very difficult to test for. So in other words, if you did a test, you may not show up as being sensitive to gluten, but if you ate a sandwich, it might give you a stomach ache or some of those other sensitive symptoms of gluten sensitivity. So gluten sensitivity is present in 1 in 50 people, and it seems to be showing up more and more commonly. And there are a couple of reasons for that. Number one is gluten is actually added to a lot of substances these days. If you were able to eat a sandwich 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and it was not going to upset your stomach, and now you're wondering why you can't eat bread anymore, some of that may be not you changing, but the bread that you're consuming is changing. So the way we process food, particularly here in America, has changed for the worst, I'm afraid. Because gluten is what makes bread fun, right? So, and Americans like more fun. We're into lots of fun. And so they add gluten. The other thing that they do is they genetically modify crops, and those crops make more gluten. So their wheat contains more of this gluten protein. And it's interesting because a lot of these places will market this wheat as being higher in protein. Yes, it is higher in the gluten protein, which is part of what's making you sick. So a lot of patients think that they're doing something that's good for themselves. They're eating a whole wheat diet, right? It's good for your heart and all that kind of stuff. And they feel like they're making all the right decisions, but unfortunately, they're getting too much gluten in their diet. Too much gluten in your diet causes an inflammatory cascade in your body. So not only can it give you an upset stomach, but it can flare arthritis. If you're prone to arthritis, gluten can make that worse. If you have an autoimmune disease of any kind, gluten is going to make that worse. In my patients, since I do GI surgery and I'm a colorectal surgeon, I see a lot of patients with Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. And those patients, if you take them off of gluten, put them on a gluten-free diet, are a lot easier to manage. Some of these patients require very little medicine after they stop their gluten in their diet. And I'm not saying a gluten-free diet is a cure for Crohn's disease. I'm just saying if you've got Crohn's disease or an autoimmune disease of any kind, if it's lupus or if it's scleroderma or You see a million of these psoriasis commercials on TV. If those people go on a gluten-free diet, it becomes easier to control the disease. It's not a cure to the disease. It's easier to control the disease because gluten flares inflammation in your body. And because gluten flares inflammation in your body, if you already have an autoimmune inflammatory disease, you are going to make yourself worse with gluten. Okay, so part of the Toker spiel is if you don't feel right, if you've got arthritis, if anything bothers you at all, anywhere in your body, give it the old college try, go gluten-free. It's easier now than ever, okay? So corn is gluten-free, although evil. I'll have a different talk about that one. Yeah, I know, I'm ruining all of your good times. Fun times stopping right here with Toker. Rice is gluten-free. Oats are gluten-free. You can go into, gosh, most grocery stores. There's a Kroger right next door to our spa. Fantastic. And across the street, there's a Market Street grocery store. Fantastic. And in both of those places, you can get gluten-free stuff that tastes pretty good. That's good for you. I didn't say it was cheap for you. I just said it was good for you. And give it a whirl. I think you'll find you feel much, much better. And most importantly, a gluten-free diet is good for your liver and your detox. And it is also compliant with your HCG diet. So anyway, happy eating less fun bread. It really, you get used to it.